Hey everyone, welcome to this 2022 special. I'm looking at the astrology for the year ahead. I'm actually going to do this in two parts because actually it's a lot of work. And as usual with my Sagittarian tendencies, I thought about it and thought, oh yeah, I can do that easily. And then thought, hang on a second, let's just be a bit realistic. So I'm actually going to do in part one, I'm going to be looking at the overall themes for 2022 and then break down the months January to June. And then tomorrow at the same time, I'm going to cover up on July until December. One of the things I want to share with you, I love that astrology can be absolutely practical. I think it's absolutely vital that astrology is practical. And so one of the things I'm going to be doing in this session, and also tomorrow's session, and in fact in all future sessions, is that as I'm looking at the charts and sharing with you exactly how things are going and which parts of the sky are being particularly emphasized, what I'm going to do is let you know the degrees that are being affected. So for instance, like the new moon on the 2nd of January is happening around 12 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. The reason I'm going to let you know like the degrees that are affected and also the date is so that if you learn your own birth chart, and if you know where your sun and your moon and your ascendant is, you'll notice where the sensitive parts of your charts are, and you can correlate them, almost like matching bingo numbers to a bingo board. But you'll be able to match your own chart to some of the dates and the degrees that I'm talking about. And you might not know how to do this right now, and that's absolutely fine, because on New Year's Day, so it's going to be part 3, what I'm going to be doing is sharing with you the astrology from so part 1, January to June, part 2, July to December, and then part 3 on New Year's Day. I'm actually going to take you through a step-by-step process so that you can create your own chart side by side with me. So I'll lead you through it and then show you how to interpret a little bit, like how to find the degrees of all your planets, and also see which parts are the most sensitive parts in your chart. So hopefully that will really give you a heads up in understanding when the sensitive times are coming, because there's a lot of stuff. And the good news is for 2022, it's actually much better, much more positive than 2019, 2020, 2021. There's some really nice aspects, and we're coming out of some difficult times, which I think is worth shouting about. But like I said, I like this to be practical. I like people to get something from it, and I like people to be forewarned, because if they are, they can plan their life. And it's not just about avoiding difficult times and creating strategies to cope and thrive through difficult times. It's also to look for the times when you might be about to soar up, and to where things are going to go well. I mean, if things are looking really positive for you, that's the time to actually build up a little bit of savings, not necessarily financial savings, but energetic savings. So when these like go times happen, you've got absolutely zero resistance, and you can use all that fantastic energy to your great benefit. So that's my thinking about it. It's teaching you how to surf the cosmic waves, which is what I like to do with my monthly clients. Anyway, I want to welcome you all. My name is Louisa Tanner-Munson. I'm sure most of you listening will know that is who I am, because my listenership is actually quite tight, and beautiful and very perfect. I imagine I'm not going to have so many people joining me today, because most of my clients and supporters are in America, and this is really super early for them, but I can see there's some people coming in. Bob Yonker is joining me. He's saying, good morning. This sounds exciting. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for joining me. Please do let me know your comments. I can only see the comments if they're coming to me via YouTube. So if you're watching this via Facebook, just click on the link. Just go to YouTube, look up Louisa Tanner-Munson. In fact, can I actually show my name? Hang on a second, just to make it even easier. Where's my name gone? I think because of sorry, StreamYard have changed the settings somewhat. So I've got another comment coming in. Sue Fraser is joining me. Hi, Sue Fraser. How are you? I hope you're having a great festive time. Jennifer Baraku is also joining me. Hi, Jen. Very nice. Bob's saying Karen is taking notes. That's fantastic. I actually think it's a good idea to write some notes. Owen Lloyd Martin, good morning, my good friend. I want to thank Owen, actually, on my birthday, which was very recently, on the 20th of December. Owen cooked me a slap-up meal. It was a complete surprise. And that food came in very handy over Christmas. So that was wonderful. And Jennifer Baraku, thank you so much. She's written my name, Louisa Tanner Munson. So if you actually want to watch via YouTube, then just go to YouTube, type in Louisa Tanner Munson, and it will be that live video going on now. If you're joining us later on, sorry for all of that, because that will be a huge distraction. Anyway, let's get to it. So the overall, also, if you do have any questions about the year ahead, then just drop them in. If I can't answer them today, I will answer them tomorrow. So it's all good. And I've got Bo Lem. Morning, lovely Louisa. I made it. Hey, I don't know if I know that name. Where are you coming from? Do I know you under a different name? I'm wondering, but thank you so much for making it. I really appreciate that. That's so great. So, 2022 then, we're releasing some of the difficult patterns that we've had over the last couple of years. For those of you that have been following me for some time or who've been following astrology, you'll know that as we went into 2020, the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, we had a very oppressive Pluto, Saturn and Jupiter conjunction coming in at the end of Capricorn. And, you know, I spoke really a lot about it, and I even refer to it now because it's still having its relevance. That conjunction back in 2019 coming into 2020, and the way it sharpened up suddenly between January and March, that really honed in on all the themes of the current pandemic. I say current, it's 2 years on almost. But all of the themes were laid out perfectly. Like Pluto is all about death and destruction and dying, where we die, or where we like let our ego go and kind of rise up again. It's all about the disintegration. And what we've seen really is the disintegration of society in so many different ways, the disintegration of our life. And it appears that there's some massive cosmic recycling going on. And if you listen to the news or listen to governments who are trying to sway us in different ways, there's this whole idea of build back better. That's a whole nother subject, but the whole idea, of everything has to collapse before it can regrow. Yeah, there might be some truth in that, but it's not necessarily in the way that it's been presented to us. So Pluto is also very controlling. Pluto is the most controlling planet in our solar system. And so when Pluto themes come up, you can bet your bottom dollar that there is something very dark and destructive and controlling going on. It's a megalomaniac kind of energy. It's kind of absolute. And then you've got Saturn, the faithful, controlling VP, the vice president, the CEO. He's not the visionary. Saturn's not the visionary at all. He's the people manager. He's the one that gets everyone doing everything. So he's the schools, the police forces, all of the UN, the CDC, all of that, all of these governing organizations that may look like they're for your very best, and they may actually turn out that they are doing things for the best. But you get this idea that there is a controller, that's Pluto, and then Saturn, some kind of legislative structure, and then Jupiter. Now Jupiter is essentially kind of a happy, expansive planet that helps us feel hopeful. However, he inflames things, he makes things bigger. And so at that time, the idea of the pandemic and the idea of the control and the idea of all the logistics spread far and wide with Jupiter's influence. And so that's what we had back in the early 2020s. And then in 2021, the big news was the Saturn Uranus Square. And it is still playing out in 2022. However, its effects are really, really low. But Saturn and Uranus, if we think about the two planets, Uranus is the farther sky. He is about consciousness. He is about all information like AI, anything that is sound waves, information packets, anything that is not perceived but comes to us as information. It's insights, it's cataclysms, it's great change, it's like the fabric of society ripping apart. Like think of Uranus as a thunderstorm. It's a lightning coming in. You could also think of it as an earth event, like an earthquake. You know, wherever Uranus is impacted, especially if you've got a very strong Uranus in your chart, you will have a life of continuous change. And sometimes those changes come in quite surprisingly. And so Uranus in this last year in 2021, of which we are still actually sat in it right now, Uranus has been bringing up lots of big change, change that some of us didn't see coming, change that some of us did, because Uranus is about insight. So a lot of people have probably awoken suddenly to something in this year and have had this insight kind of boomed into their head, and they're like, whoa, where did that come from? Now, Saturn, I've mentioned, is like the great controller. So if you think of like old Father Time, and then this new zippy kind of, I'm going to thrill you with these changes, you've got these two very conflicting energies of old and crusty and legislative, and then new and trendy, or shocking and advanced and AI. And so there's been a lot of themes of old versus new this year. And where do we sit in that? And actually, the funny thing is, you know, pretty much my whole life, and I'd like to hear from you guys, how has it been for you? Pretty much my whole life, I've been like, out with the old, in with the new. And then in this year, actually, it's swapped for me. I've actually been realizing that, you know, we throw the baby out with the bathwater when we get rid of all the old stuff, because actually some of the old stuff is actually quite useful. So it's been a time of change for all of us. And also I've seen in a lot of my clients a complete switch in political theory or political belief systems, and also religious belief systems in people, and spiritual ones. So our context has changed a lot over 2021. And some people have knuckled into their beliefs, and then others are just like, oh God, it's too painful. I've got to let go of that one and embrace. Now, here's where it gets exciting. Just yesterday, Jupiter went into the sign of Pisces, and Jupiter's a big planet in this year ahead. Jupiter's doing some kind of cool things. He's going into Pisces, just gone in, and he's zipping through Pisces super fast. It usually takes him a year to go through a sign, and he's done and dusted with Pisces come May, and then he goes into Aries, and then in October, he's reversing back out into Pisces to say, hang on a sec, I think I left a bit like, you know, he's gone out for the day, so he's got in his car, he's zoomed off into the future, and then he's realized he's left a saucepan on. And so he reverses back just into Pisces just to check, did I leave the saucepan on or not? No, okay, I'm going again. And then by the end of the year, he's back into Aries. So we're going to be talking about Jupiter. Jupiter's also making this huge, I say huge, but he's making an aspect to Neptune, which he only makes approximately every 12 years or so. So it's a pretty big one. Now, each of the star signs has a ruler, a planetary ruler, and Pisces, which is the big news at the moment because Jupiter's just gone into it. Pisces is ruled by Neptune and also Jupiter. And in April, Jupiter and Neptune are actually together in a conjunction. They're touching. And so they're touching for the first time in 12 years, and they're both in their own sign, in the sign of Pisces. Now, Pisces is the sign to do with the great unconscious. Sorry to say that, because I'm not saying that if you're a Pisces, you're unconscious. Definitely not saying that. But the Pisceans, if you think of the fish, the two fish swimming in different directions, and they're in the ocean, you know, they're not in a lake or a nice little pool. They're in the ocean, and it's so deep. You have no idea what's going on inside the Pisces mind, in their psyche. You know, Pisces don't really know their boundaries necessarily. It's very, very difficult for them to determine that. As signs go, they're very, very open and feel everything, even if they don't know that they feel everything. You know, some people are aware of it and they are deliciously talented empaths. They feel everything. Or in particular, people with moon in Pisces or a really strong Pisces element in their chart, they will feel everything. So you've got this feel everything, sensing everything, because you're connected, you're in the ocean, swimming around, can't quite see what's ahead. If you shine the light on it, you can see it, but you know, it illuminates just part of it. So it's the sign of Pisces, like the big mystery. It's like the universe. Or the universe that exists inside ourselves. I mean, we don't actually know exactly what goes on in our bodies. And each time doctors or scientists sort of like drill down in their magnification, all we realize is there's more space in us than we ever realized, and less matter. And it's a bit like that with the Pisces thing. We actually realize we are in space, inside our bodies, in the reality, and we don't know what we can hold on to, how we can steady ourselves. And so we've got the energy of Jupiter, which can be arrogant, and it's very expansive. It grows, it's optimistic, it's hopeful. But then think about it from this perspective. What have you learned about people who are hopeful, optimistic, who think they can do everything because they're so hopeful and they're so positive that they just go out and do stuff? Often these people can be quite arrogant. They often are a bit accident prone because they just go for stuff. They don't really regulate who and what, you know, like they don't regulate what they're doing. They don't really censor themselves. So we have sometimes a lot of impulsivity with the sign, with the planet Jupiter. You know, he's a good character, but he can definitely create problems as well by, you know, leaping before he's had a proper chance to look around and find out what's going on. So we've got that energy going into the star sign of spirituality and open space and mystery, and I would say religion comes into that, the unconsciousness, our memories, our past, all those things that we felt but couldn't articulate, all those mysteries about us, about our past, possibly about past lives as well. All those mysteries about the connections we have with people, all those unanswered questions that we've always had. All of a sudden, we've got this like Jupiter planet going bounding into it and being optimistic and opening all of that up, opening up our heart chakra, opening up our memories. And it could be painful. We've got Neptune there, and Neptune is the great deceiver, but also the great magician, and also the great, could even be unconditional love. Neptune, I think, it has a spectrum of creativity. And so what's the highest level of creativity? I think it's unconditional love and complete creation, like the power of creation. And what's the lowest form of creativity? Wow, it's probably depravity. It's you know, it's creating like mass problems. And so with Neptune, if it's positive, if you're working with the energy of creation in this mysterious place called Pisces, and you've got Jupiter going in, making it bigger and bigger and bigger, it could get very, very magical very, very quickly for a lot of people who are switched on to this. But for people who aren't switched on to their spirituality and their belief systems, it could be a hugely confusing time. I think of Neptune as the urge to merge. So, you know, when we're really down with it, we're merging into this place of oneness. We feel the sensation of oneness, and yes, we're excited by it, and it feels so good. It almost reminds us of who we really are. And of course, I actually don't know, but I sense that is what is happening for us. And yet the urge to merge with Neptune, when it's like a badass Neptune, it's kind of like, I need to forget myself rather than merge with infinity. I need to forget myself. Let's have some drink and drugs, and let's have some exciting sex and do some thrilling things, anything to take ourselves out of ourselves. So we've got this phenomenon of possible extreme hedonism or extreme spirituality. But what I do foresee, especially in that April time, is that we will be having extreme reactions that will be creating massive imprints on our psyche and in our unconscious minds. And so, you know, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to share this message, is because if you are spiritually inclined and you've been feeling a bit of the confusion, because, you know, these times have been quite confusing, now is the time to really develop a practice or develop a few safety mechanisms, so that as this opening occurs, you're completely surrounded by the feeling of love, or you've created it, or you've got some great supportive friends around you. You need some support system. So when you think you're experiencing something really spiritual, that you can be encouraged and nurtured and have the space held for you. And also you might see people who are opening up themselves, who may be floundering. So that's a little heads up. Another heads up for 2022 is also that the North Node is changing signs. Now, the North Node is our karma, our collective karma. So, collective karma, that's an interesting one. The North Node shows the direction we're going in, and its opposing point in the chart shows where we're coming from. That's the South Node. That's what we can lose. And where we've just been is we've had the North Node in Gemini, showing that we need to be heading towards being more multi-skilled, being broader, not necessarily knowing everything as deeply, but we need to have a much broader knowledge base. In recent times, we've all become specialists in things, and that's been encouraged. If you think about education, everyone's always saying, oh, what are you going to be when you're older? And, oh, you're going to university. And then it's like, oh, are you going to get your master's? And there's so much kudos put on experts and not much put on people who actually know a man who can and know how to solve all their problems. So we've had this kind of need to become very practical, to be able to solve as many of our problems as possible, and also to network very extensively, not necessarily to have deep and meaningful connections, but to know a lot of people, to get back into our communities. And we've been moving away from this expert thing represented by the South Node in Sagittarius, where it's like someone's like, oh, I've studied this. Just listen to me. You can forget all of the gurus or anyone else. Just listen to me. I'm your person. And you can see that that's been playing out in this last year when information has been deliberately censored. So we've been told who we can trust, these experts that we must trust, and we've been encouraged away from finding our own answers. And yet cosmically, that's what we've been doing. We're heading into the time of finding our own answers and moving away from the bullshit of relying on just one source of information. I mean, how I can't see how other people haven't seen it. I know loads of people who are watching this will have seen it and gone, yeah, man, there's nothing scientific about just trusting one person religiously. So the North Node is now heading into the sign of Taurus, and that's setting a new theme for the next 18 months. It's a new karmic theme for humanity. And that's happening in this in January. That's when the tables turn a bit. And the new set point for humanity, the new direction, is going into natural, loving, resourceful states. So if you think about it, if we just take a step back, where we've been connecting more to our communities. We've been finding new communities, finding new tribes. I'm sure most of the people listening here today, whether you're listening in live or later on, I'm sure that's what's been going on, is that you've been realizing that, maybe the tribes you've been in aren't right, or the families or the communities, and you've been jostling and finding your own place, these new places. And now what's happening is we're going into the deepening of that. Not to say that we're getting into bed with them all, but we're learning to trust each other. Like the message of Taurus is about trust. It's about natural communication, like nature knows. So we're being encouraged to find all of our answers. Just want to quickly say hello to Jenny, who's just joined us. Hi, Jenny. Thanks for joining us. So, the North Node in Taurus is all about natural connection. And that will play out. In the way we find remedies, find cures, find a way to get on with our neighbors, find a way to get on with our family and our tribes, find a new way to communicate. It's all about getting in deeper into our new communities that we're building. It's almost like we're building a new reality. And the sign of Taurus is the second sign. The second sign is all about resources. It's like, what have we got? Okay, like we've got bricks, we've got mortar, let's build a house together. So we are actually building things in our community, and that's a strong thing. And the South Node is in Scorpio, and it's like, what are we letting go of? Okay, well, we're letting go of possessiveness. We're letting go of excessive pride. We're letting go of jealousy. We're letting go of the do or die. If you don't do this, this is going to happen. We're letting go of that and being a bit more generous and kind and loving and accepting. So that's the sort of like cosmic move. And then later on, so these are the overriding themes. So I've done the Jupiter and Neptune one and had a quick look at the North Node changing signs. The other one, which I'm going to talk more about tomorrow, in tomorrow's session, is Uranus in a conjunction with the North Node. That's going to be quite shocking. That's happening in July. But if we go back to Uranus, our great big shocker, our person who raises consciousness quite quickly, in late July in 2022 is going into a conjunction in the North Node. And this is going to, it's going to be shocking people onto their path. So it's kind of saying, are you already on your karmic path? If not, why not? And for those that are, you'll probably experience that as more insight and more of a confirmation that that's what you're doing. But for people who've been not following their path, or their path has been leading them off in a direction that actually doesn't feel very good, the gap between where they feel like they might need to be and where they are is going to be shockingly wide. So yeah, this could be quite difficult. I want to put out a shout out to Jenny Slater. Bonjour. My lovely Jenny is coming to us from the trees in France. So welcome. This is a truly international show. I love that. Thank you for joining us. So yeah, like I said at the start, that's just a bit of an overview. Let's have a look at things on a month by month basis. Now I'm going to share my screen. And I will come back to the comments regularly just to check in. If you've got a question, then please do put it in and I'll answer it if I can. One sec. So let's make that bigger. Hang on. I'm not sure how big that is, but I'm going to talk you through it. And I will sort of explain what we're looking at. So the first chart, there's a few charts. Well, there's two charts I'm going to share with you for January. The first one is the new moon, which starts on the 2nd of January. And it's at 12 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. Now, like I said right at the start, I am going to be sharing the most important degrees with each of these charts that I'm going to share with you, so that if you know your chart or if you want to learn it, you can learn it in a couple of days' time when I do another show. I'll show you how to bring up your chart, but I'm going to give you the tools so you can cross-reference your own chart and find out which parts of your chart are sensitive, and we'll zero in. So on the 2nd of January, we've got this energy here with the sun and the moon at 12 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. Actually, as we start January, like as we are right now, Venus is retrograde, and I mentioned this in my December update, but Venus retrograde puts us into quite a nostalgic mood, and she only comes around, like she goes retrograde every couple of years, for 40 days and 40 nights, and during that time we start thinking about the good old days and stuff that we really enjoyed, and we often think about our exes, and our exes pop up, or old situations that you were really heavily invested in show up. And so as we enter into the new year and into January, we are feeling kind of wistful and not quite grounded in our own reality. It's like our consciousness is kind of in the past and when everything was perfect. And the learning for us at the moment is actually that every moment is good for different reasons. And also, if something that was good in the past has ceased to persist, it must not be the truth for you right now. And that the truth of where the goodness is for you is coming, or it's with you right now. So it's a time of us kind of realizing that our exes are our exes for a reason. These old situations weren't right for us, and that's why they kind of dropped out of you or dropped out of your consciousness. But it's a time of being wistful. But it's interesting because here, so we've got the new moon. So the moon and the sun are together in Capricorn, and Venus is retrograde. Now, when she started her retrograde, she was right here over Pluto. And this Pluto point is particularly sensitive because this matches to the start of the pandemic. So a lot of the wistfulness that we've got is probably to the time just before that all started. And and to a time when, we felt like we knew the world that we were inhabiting. And so as Venus is going back, she's actually coming back to this point here, to the point of the new moon, and then by the end of the month she's going to start moving forwards again. So how I'm really seeing this as an interpretation for January is that we're unwinding, we're thinking about what's happened to our relationships over the last couple of years, and we're kind of winding it back and trying to make sense of it. Any personal retrograde, and by that I mean a retrograde by a personal planet, so Mercury, Venus, and Mars. I'm not worried about the outer ones because they spend most of their time retrograde, but these private planets, these personal planets, they affect us actually at a personal level. They really remind us of the work that we're still doing on ourselves and need to experience. And so, Venus going retrograde, she's reminding us that there's unfinished business that we almost need to lay to rest, and just realize that, we might have these moments where we think times were better when, for instance, like right now, I'm meeting a lot of expats who are just moving to Portugal, or even just expats that are moving to different places. I've got a lot of that in my vibration right now, hence I'm sort of attracting a lot of people to me that are going through these massive changes in where they live in their communities. And so it's during these times that we might actually think, oh, have I made a mistake? Or did I do the right thing? Am I in the right place? So it's not necessarily just people, but it's places that or situations where we've attached a lot of emotion. So if you're feeling like that, know that this too will pass. This is coming out of our reality on the 29th of January, when Venus starts moving forwards, and then by the 2nd of March this year, another actually new moon, then that Venus is long gone, and she's moving off. It really feels like we can completely lay that to rest again for another 2 years by the 2nd of March. So there's that going on. Then we've also got Mercury going retrograde. Actually, I'm going to come back to this sign in a second, this chart in a second. Mercury is going retrograde on the 14th of January, and on the 14th of January, Mercury is at 10 degrees in the sign of Aquarius. So anyone that's got if you've got anything at 12 degrees in the sign of Capricorn, that's really being triggered at the start of January for your month ahead. It's really emphasizing the need, according to where it's happening in your chart, it's emphasizing the need for a new start. In particular, a new start with your reality, how you're sensing things. Capricorn, in particular, this first month is very much about our standing in the world. Like, what are we doing? How are we showing up? Are we on target? Are we doing what's right? Are we doing the right thing? Because often it takes a bit longer to do that. It's a longer road. But the Capricorn message is we take the longer road. We see our sights and we work towards them, and it's okay. So it's a long, slow movement. But if you're making that movement every single day, even if it's just a tiny, tiny step, it's a very sort of like grown-up motion. So anyone with something around 10 to 13 degrees in the sign of Capricorn, if it's significant, then you are walking this long path right now, and it's really pertinent that you plan it and are able to coach your way through it, or get someone to coach you. It's important that you see every step as being significant. So the retrograde of Mercury then that's happening on the 14th, then we've got Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde. This is about our thinking. Like, where have our thoughts taken us recently? Where have our thoughts taken us, in particular to things to do with society and how things are set up, and in particular, how are we doing as humans? Are we being particularly humanitarian? Are we each other's brother or sister? How are we showing up? And how do we feel about technology and all things new? How do we feel about new systems coming in? There's a lot of sort of chatter going on in our brains about that. It's also significant, I think. Mercury in Aquarius is very much about learning new languages. So are we learning something like a new language or a new skill, a new technical skill? Are we learning to read something in a new way? Are we learning like a completely new subject, which might sound like a completely different language to us? It's very much about learning a new like mindset. So that's going on, and we're unwinding what we already know and setting off on this kind of new mental path. The retrograde with Mercury is done and dusted by the beginning of February. So, I don't see Mercury retrograde as being too drastic. We have them 3 times a year and they last a few weeks. It's a time to have a bit of a meditative reboot. But the sort of reboot theme is very much about how we are showing up in terms of how, I guess, beautiful we are. Like, are we being magnificent? So quickly, just back to this new moon. Then it's a new start. It's carrying the themes of our emotions. It's carrying the themes of the Venus retrograde, rewinding back from the start of the pandemic to work out where we are now and how we're coping with it, and how we reset our future based on that. Something else that I think is worth sharing is the fact that our emotional state changes can happen really fast because it's in a lovely trine with Uranus. So we can make some real big leaps, some big emotional leaps about how we value ourselves and how we value others, and how we can value the sensible actions that we've taken. So, like our long-term plans, we can make some great advances with them, but we can also realize new skills to help us along in the way. So it seems pretty practical and helpful. The new moon is also in a great relationship to Mars and Sagittarius, which is quite campaigning. Mars and Sagittarius is actually quite happy. It kicks the shit up a little bit. Anyone born with Mars and Sagittarius, yours truly, we are a bit of a campaigner on the sly. The sort of big yangy energy of Mars, which is about movement and taking action, is very philosophical. So we have a lot of philosophical activists. So there is that energy also at the time of the beginning of January. Okay, let's have a look then at the full moon, which is taking place on the 17th. And I'll let you know what's particularly important to realize. This is a big one. This is a bit of a shocker for people, I think. And the reason for that is the sun is in a conjunction with Pluto. So the big controlling agency of Pluto, like, you cannot do this, you must do that, is combining with ego. So this is a time, if we're left unchecked, we're likely to, under the pressure of the full moon, which is like being in a pressure cooker, our emotions and our kind of reasonable side are poles apart. It feels like we are being stretched so far that, we're about to just like snap. And in that, there's this emotional part of us that is really tender and wants to be connected to all those we love and all the things that we know to be true for us and good and kind and right. And at some level, there is this rational voice that is control, 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 control. And it's really playing out in such a way that it feels like we're at some kind of breaking point. I do see that as being particularly significant. At the same time, the next day, or pretty much at the same time, the North Node is changed signs. It's no longer in the sign of Gemini and it's into Taurus, just gone into Taurus. Now, when the North Node changes signs, you tend to get, I think this is the truth for all the outer planets as well. When a planet changes signs, it tends to really be like on steroids. So like initially, as we go into the North Node in Taurus, which is about, like I said, it's about connecting within our communities and going in deeper with our communities. What's going to happen is it's going to be so much more relevant. So it's like we've got this full moon where we're feeling really, really stretched and frustrated with anyone that believes anything opposing to us. We're also going to dig down deep into our communities. And what's likely to happen is we're just going to go deeper into our own echo chambers. It's going to be a really difficult time for us to see things in a balanced way, because the moon in the sign of Cancer is hyper emotional. It's, it's easily triggered and it's quite frightened And it's also got some super defensive powers, with those pincers. And there is that feeling of needing to hide away and, kind of like lick our wounds, and attack if someone comes near. And then on the other side, it feels like there's this ego, this collective ego going around that's like, yeah, this is how it is. It's it's quite a worrying full moon. But it's not the most significant thing, and these things will change. So let's have a look at February then. In February, we've got the end of the Mercury retrograde, and then we've just got a new moon and a full moon. This actually is quite a simple month as months go. So let's just bring that chart in now. So the new moon happens on the 4th of February, and it's at 12 degrees in the sign of Aquarius. Now, that's quite significant because Mercury retrograde started around this area. And so this new moon, even though it takes place just after the Mercury retrograde has finished, it's almost saying, what have you learned in these last few weeks? What have you learned between the 14th of January and now? Because what you've learned is what you need to restart and continue with. So we're looking at this new moon, the new moon energy, the energy of activation, the energy of restarting our lives, or setting a new direction, or setting a new intention might be an even better way of saying it. But it's in the sign of Aquarius. It's about, are we together? Are we with our brothers and sisters? How equal are we? And actually, what does that mean? So it's interesting because I've considered myself to be a bit of a lifelong socialist, or somebody that believes in the equality and diversity of everyone, and I think we should all be allowed to love each other in the way that makes sense to ourselves, so long as we're not, abusing somebody. And I think people should be able to be independent and to make their own decisions, which are all very Aquarian themes. It's very much about equality of situations for people. And yet, in recent times, it almost feels to me, and I'd like to know if it feels like that to you, it almost feels like the equality agenda has become militarized, or has become it's become a place where you actually can't share your views. It's become a place where it's highly censored. So you can only say things in a certain way, because if not, you're some kind of hater or some kind of narcissist, or, so it's actually, what's happened is people have become less equal or less able to do the same things. Actually, what seems to be occurring is people are being told this exactly is how you're able to be, and if not, then you must be a hater or something like that. So it really feels like the social and equality, diversity movements, and on all sorts of issues that weren't even really openly discussed like a couple of years ago, it all seems to have blown up. And so I do think possibly some of this is coming to the fore in January in preparation for us and this new moon on the 4th of Feb. So I think it's a time to really, especially if you've considered yourself to be somebody who is more socialistic, or like we say left leaning in the UK, that might mean something completely different in a different culture. But the ideas of helping each other and working together may have been recoded for us recently, and it's a time for us to get very clear about what that means to us. Like, what language works for us? How does that work for us? So they're these sort of like big themes I see. Now, at that time, the moon and the sun and Saturn are in a conjunction. Now, this is significant because, and Sue Fraser is saying, yeah, totally agree. Thank you for that. That's helpful. That's helpful to know, because, I'm in my own echo box here. So until I hear back from you guys, who knows? I could be kidding myself. So I like that. Thank you, Sue. The other thing is that have you heard of transactional analysis? Like the idea that we have a childlike persona, an adult persona, and a parental persona. So like the parental can be a nurturing parent, or it can be a really judgmental kind of persona. You did this, that's punishable, or the child can be a free and spontaneous and happy child, or a whiny, needy child. And then the adult, the adult self is supposed to be quite balanced and able to be assertive, and to be able to move freely. And these are kind of like three sides of us. Transactional analysis is it allows you to see the kind of language you're using, to see which of these three modes you're using the most. Because if you're being judgmental, you're likely to come across lots of whiny children who are victims. And so, we can change our language to alter our perception and what's going on. Now, in astrology, there's something called triastral astrology, which an amazing astrologer called Spencer Grandal wrote a book about many years ago. I've had it for almost 30 years, I think. But he says that the moon is like our child self, our sun is our adult self, and then Saturn is the parent self. And so these three are together. And what he says is when these three come together, we don't know which side we're activated on or by or through. So another important thing to bear in mind with this new moon is how are you doing in your language when you're using it to yourself, when you're using it with other people? How assertive are you being? Like the best way is to be able to talk about what you're intending to do and how you're doing it without putting blame and judgment on others, and without being kind of victimy and at cause by other people's behaviors. So it's all about taking responsibility. And so I also see that this new moon is a balancing of us taking personal responsibility for the things, for our lives, and realizing that, we all have choices. And sometimes those choices might be very clear and very easy to make, and other times those choices might be pretty shitty. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes our choices aren't that great, but we still usually have a choice. And so this is very much about how do we choose our way forwards, and how do we do it without being judgy and without being victimy or irresponsible, or it is very much about being empowered. And being independent with the Aquarian theme. So then we've other things that I think are significant around that time is also that Pluto and Mercury are together. So as that's coming about with this new moon, we might be thinking in terms of our own empowerment. Like Mercury is still retrograde and it's heading towards Pluto, and as Mercury, in fact, Mercury stops being retrograde that same day. So it is literally at Pluto as it stops its retrograde. So with this new moon, there's the thinking about our own power. Like, are we returning to power? Like Pluto is the sort of COVID phenomenon instigator. During this time, we are thinking in terms of, have we regained our power, and have we regained our full understanding of what's happening? Now, the full moon on the 16th of February, this chart looks a little bit clearer. What I like about this is the coming together of the masculine and the feminine. So we've got the moon in Leo at 27 degrees and the sun at 27 degrees in the sign of Aquarius. Now, Aquarius and Leo are both fixed signs. So with this kind of full moon, it's a very stubborn full moon. It's one where it feels like there's very little relief between our ego and then our emotions. Our emotions, like a Leo moon can be quite look at me. Like, look at me, my emotions are really important, I'm an important person. Like, when the moon goes into the sign of Leo, we tend to become a little bit more self-absorbed and a lot more about sovereignty, and this has to work for me, and we might throw our toys out the pram, and the ego is almost saying, okay, but we need to be part of society. And so I think the big one here in February, and this might be an ask that comes from the governments, or an overall message that is really sort of broadcast. I say broadcast quite meaningfully, actually, because when you think about TV and news and media, it's a broadcast, isn't it? What is a broadcast? Like you're casting seeds and you're doing it really broadly. It's programming of its highest order. But it might be that the messages coming out at that time are massive broadcasts about you have to let go of the selfish need to be yourself, and you have to join the collective. You have to do the socially right thing or something. So don't be surprised if messages like that come up. But at the same time, allow yourself to feel, things are going to change. Things are going to change rapidly as we go into the next month. You're going to notice some shifts. We've got Venus and Mars together, and that is a coming together of man and woman, or partners. But it's a representation of our different sides integrating. I see that as our yielding, loving, and generous side, and also our warrior side. So, we're less pulled apart, even though it's the time of the full moon, and our emotions might be super, super strong. There is something binding us and keeping us together. So it feels like whatever we're feeling actually is actually kind of in integrity to who we are. So there's a very strong thing. Also, with the sort of like masculine and feminine coming together, we've also got a lovely trine with Uranus, showing that we can be actually quite dashing and insightful when we're really, rather than thinking about my emotions versus this is what I'm told to do, if we actually like check in, like, how does that feel as a woman? How does that feel as a man? How does that feel inside your body? Like the feminine, masculine, or Venus and Mars, they're very much about being inside your body and being embodied. How can you feel embodied in this time? And as you tune in to what's going on inside your body, I really feel that the insights of Uranus can kind of come straight in. So it's quite a psychic time. So let's see if there's anything else. I love Jenny saying, yeah, who's in the driving seat? Yeah, I think that's really important, with this whole February sort of shenanigans, is like, who is in the driving seat of you? Are you in the driving seat, or are you? It's very easy when governments or news media and celebrities also endorse these things, and they're telling us this is how it should be and this is what your reality is. And it's very natural. I think we're very sort of compliant as a species, humans, or maybe we've just been dumbed down. I don't know, but I think we're naturally gregarious people. We naturally want to help each other and to come together. Like when if an accident occurs in front of us, most humans will rush over to check if somebody's okay, and we will have no thought for ourselves. We instantly try and save another person if we see somebody in trauma. So I'm actually pretty convinced that February is our time to get back in the driver's seat. So March is kind of interesting. We've got the full return of Venus, like, her retrograde. She's out of the retrograde shadow on the 2nd. We've got this wonderful new moon. So let's bring this up right now. Where is it? So the new moon on the 2nd of March, this is a big one. If you've got anything in your chart at 12 degrees, between, say, 11 and 14 degrees in the sign of Pisces, that's going to be huge. Also, if you've got that in the sign of Virgo, so like 10 to 14 degrees in the sign of Virgo, that polarity, like those degrees here, are being really triggered by this new moon, because you've got this new moon in Pisces and Jupiter in Pisces in his own sign, and also Neptune in Pisces in his own sign. It is that right at the start where I was talking about the delicious energy, the psychic energy, the how everything is just a big merge. This is, I think, the time when we return to spirituality. We might be dropping our religion, we might be dropping our philosophy, we might be dropping so much, but actually what we're really yearning for is that connection. And this new moon on the 2nd of March seems really significant to me, because as it takes place on the 2nd of March, it takes place at 5:34 p.m. Within 2 hours or 3 hours, it's going to be in a conjunction with Jupiter. So the moon in a conjunction with Jupiter is like this emotional, expansive, hopeful connection. And then about another 6 hours later, the moon will be in a conjunction with Neptune here. So it's like a really, really, really strong day of connecting to universal forces, spiritual forces, forces we can't quite articulate, but we can feel. It's that sense of knowingness. Carl and I, on one of our shows, we shared a Charles Eisenstein clip called "The Gathering of the Tribe." If you haven't already listened to it, and you know this connection is the thing that turns you on, I would absolutely recommend you look it up, "The Gathering of the Tribe," because in it he talks about our remembrance, and I think the 2nd of March, you know, is a time of massive remembrance. So even if in like January and February, you're ahead of the crowd and thinking, the hell's going on? I'm already in my driver's seat. I'm a bit concerned about what's going on, but I know that I'm fully responsible for what happens to my body and my life. And I'm going to do my best to reflect that. And you might be thinking, oh my God, I'm on my own. But come March, I really see this massive softening and a massive opening. And it's just the start. It really is just the start. So this is a big, big day. If you've got any big projects going on about, you know, spirituality or like the return to deliciousness, divine, whatever, it would be a fantastic time to launch it because it's a really, really strong day. Now, what else is also strong is the fact that we've got this huge, rather powerful conjunction with Pluto and Mars and Venus, and they're all at exactly 27 degrees. So that's massive. It's almost saying that the COVID, oh shit, I said it. Ooh, I said, oh, well, I've been using the SH1T all the way through this. It's my channel. So what? But anyway, the pandemic sort of phenomenon is now being made very real, but on a personal level where it's no longer a concept. Like, I think for the last couple of years, it's been a concept. Like, this is what we've been told about. And yes, some of us have experienced, like we've been told that some of our friends and family maybe have been affected, or we've known people who've tested in a particular way and have been affected. But for most people I speak to, very few have had their lives turned upside down in terms of personal loss. We know somebody that has, often removed from the family, but very, very few people that I talk to have actually had an up close and personal and sort of experience. However, we've all been affected, but we've been affected by this concept, like how we're allowed to live our lives, or being told we're allowed to live our lives, what we can and can't do, and when and where, and what we need to wear, and what we need to produce, and show me your papers. You know, it's been a concept that's been kind of brought onto us, but not necessarily our personal experience that has kind of brought it in. You know, so it feels it's been very conceptual, and it has kind of changed our lives. But what I'm seeing here is a return to power of people, where it feels like I will choose if this is my experience or not. You know, so you know, Capricorn is the sign to do with our reality and also our career reality and how we are showing up. And here there's like a little girl archetype and also a warrior boy archetype who can, you know, grow up into, you know, a powerful woman and man. But we've got this kind of full archetype. And, you know, I'm not talking in terms of, like, I'm not really saying that to be talking about gender, but it's more about the sides of us that might be yielding or thrusting. And at that time, we're neither thrusting nor yielding, but we're not like standing still. What we are is we're standing in power, because there's a huge power with yielding. That's where resurrection comes from. And there's a huge and with yielding comes forgiveness and kindness and compassion. And like with Mars, the thrusting, there's a huge power to know when to move forwards and push forwards and to be an unstoppable force. And yet we've also got Pluto here, which is complete control. So I actually see given that there's the two personal planets, Mars and Venus, which are about people, not concepts. It's about people. This is people power. So we've got people power, and we've got this massive opening of the heart, of the third eye, the pineal, because the pineal is definitely in the sign of Pisces for sure. We've got this massive opening and this massive standing in power. And also other themes I think come up with Jupiter and Neptune and Pisces is trust. That's the biggest thing. I think it's the return of personal trust. I really see it coming. And one last thing about this lovely new moon on the 2nd of March is that the Pluto, Mars, and Venus conjunction are in a beautiful trine with the North Node, showing that actually we're on our karmic path. It really feels like we know that actually we need to go deeper with our communities and trust more. And kind of pull together, not because we're pulling together because we have, we might need to, but because that's what we do. It's just like the return of trust, and that's huge, really big. I wonder how that's settled with people. Let me know how that one lands. And then we got the full moon on the 18th, just before the solstice, which is marking the next season. So the full moon, I'm going to start picking up speed a little bit, because otherwise this is really going to go on, and I don't want it to be torturous for you. The full moon then, after this massive opening on the 2nd of March, we've now got this, and this is happening on the 18th of March. We've now got this almost critical point coming up where we are feeling trusting in our own instincts, and there is this emotional pull to be rational all of a sudden and to worry, oh, did we make the right decision? Can we really trust our intuitions here? And so that's where we're being pulled apart. However, even though we're being pulled apart, there's this great, what's known as a kite formation. So even though the moon, our emotions, and it might be like that, if you remember, the moon represents the child. It might be our inner child. Like most of us, when we were raised, we learned to bypass our instincts because we were told, oh, you can't trust your instincts, or, you're too small to really understand the world. You heard that? And so at the time of this full moon on the 18th, there is almost this a counter talk going on in your brain, or what might come on the media, that you can't trust your instincts. And actually, if you're being instinctual, you're not being scientific. But what I like about it is, even though it looks like we're falling apart at the seams, we're actually very powerful in our instincts. And actually, what we'll learn is that even by questioning, are we doing the right thing, we're actually more powerful. The trine here between the moon and Pluto is great, and the moon and the North Node. And so that is all connecting up. Also, the sun is in a conjunction with Neptune, again, really saying we need to be instinctual, follow our intuition, really know our gut instinct. So what we've got here, even though it's a full moon, and, all full moons have that kind of anxious feel to them. But what's really wonderful is that even when we're questioning our instincts, we're actually becoming more powerful. Because actually, and I think most people here would agree, actually the best thing we can do is have both. When we are just totally in our instincts, we could totally be in an echo chamber. But it is, we are in a place of polarity. If you're going down one side without adhering to another, or at least listening to another side, then we could end up in trouble. So I actually see this being us instinctual, but practicing and learning that, sometimes it's good to just check in a bit. Got a few comments here. So Owen is saying, I'm looking forward to March. I forgot my past relationships, not going back there. Everything has to come from me and no one else. Definitely, 100%. False friendships have gone too. I'm ready to embrace the new. Well done, you. Yeah, it's a big one, isn't it? False friendships. Yeah, it's interesting because there are so many people we make friends with, and Yeah, there are some times when people come into our lives that we maybe don't trust as much. Who knows? Bob Yonker is saying, thanks, looking forward to this coming year. Gotta go listen more later. Love and blessings to you all and all those listening. Loving light warriors. Oh, woohoo. Well done. Thanks, Bob. Yeah, be sure to check in because I think there might be some things that relate to yours and Karen's charts. So let's have a look. So that's March. Oh, last one in March. Oh, Kate K is saying, seems equality movement has been weaponized to cause even more division. That's my sense of it. Definitely. I 100%. I really think that's happened. So it's interesting that other people are seeing that too. I love that. Right. The equinox then. This is setting the scene for the next quarter. So it's the start of spring, the official start of spring. And it happens on the 20th of March. And then we are really, I'm going to really sort of like motor through the next bit. What I like about this is the sun is at 0 degrees in the sign of Aries, and the moon at literally a couple of hours later is at 0 degrees too. It's passing into one sign from another. So we've got in spring, we're moving from the unconsciousness of Pisces, which can be compliance, it can be being a little bit childish, it can be very collective, and we're moving into independence. So that's the theme of spring, is rising into independence. And here's the other bit: the moon, at the same time as the equinox is occurring, is moving out of the feeling of togetherness and partnership, and actually we have to do everything together or else, and we're moving into a place of strength and power. So even though I've been talking about us like trusting our instincts and stuff like that, I don't think that ends. I really don't. In fact, there's some big charts coming up that show that doesn't end. The feelings and the intuition definitely stay. But as we start spring on the 20th of March 2022, we are feeling a stronger vibration. So we've got Aries and Mars, both of them are ruled by Mars. And Scorpio we've got Aries and Scorpio, both ruled by Mars. And then Scorpio is also ruled by Pluto. You know, they are both very direct, defensive, and strong and independent, you know, in their energies. So we are instinctual. That sort of coding has come in. In fact, you know, the new moon on the 2nd of March might even be almost like a download. You know, some people experience that inrush of energy and it feels like, wow, I've had some kind of encoding. And then, yeah, on the 20th of March, what's going on is the start of this new feeling, and it's independent in ourselves. We're feeling stronger in ourselves. All of us are feeling stronger. We're actually ready to say, enough. I know what's right for me. So there's definitely that really strong feeling. There is Uranus is actually in quite a good position with Mars and Venus, in as much as again it's an energy of take no problems from people who are trying to possibly control the outcomes. So again, we've got the male and the female working together, or the integration of energy within us. So not only are we standing strong as people because the sun is in Aries and the moon is going into Scorpio, and we're feeling empowered, we're also very integrated inside, and also in a social way, as noted by Aquarius. And we may well show our cards. We may well say, no, enough, that stops. That's where I draw my line. I would imagine that from about the 20th of March, we enter into a time when things might get very turbulent politically, because there is a backlash. I don't think things are just going to be taken lying down. And I know, as many of you guys will be knowing, anyone that's watching this is likely to have seen protests around the world, you know, and what's been going on, very much unreported in mainstream media. You know, there are protests going on all around the world every single weekend, without fail. and everything, every control that is assumed and put on people is being fought back against. I see us from the spring equinox going to a very defensive time, and it may very well be quite disruptive, and it may break out into some rucks. I don't want to call violence or anything like that, but Uranus is about creating change, and is also quite riotous. It's very independent, and with that sort of square to Mars, that can really break out in violence. Like Mars and Uranus in a square is, it's tight. So I'm seeing a new direction coming about, and that's the start of spring. So let's go into April then. And actually, where's the new moon? Where did that go? These have gone out of order slightly. Okay, the new moon on April the 1st. So this is a strong new moon. We've got the moon and the sun at 11 degrees, and also Chiron, which is the wounded healer. This is about our childhood wounds. It's a very sensitive point in our charts. Anyone that's got anything from, say, 8 degrees Aries to about 13, 14 degrees Aries, if you've got a sensitive spot in your chart, this new moon on the 1st of April is going to be dynamite. If you do have anything around that space, you will have already been experiencing quite a lot of trauma, because Chiron's there, and Chiron like pierces open our wounds. It pierces open that sensitive spot. And at this time, with Mercury coming there and the moon and the sun, there is this very independent, very strong, I will defend. My mind is made up. I know my feelings. There's a very, very strong urge going on. And a lot of that is coming from unresolved hurt. So, where we've been bullied, where we've been put down, where we've been cajoled in different ways. All of those memories are coming straight up, and we are really resolute. It's a very, very strong time. Also, in not too far away from there, we've got the conjunction between Jupiter and Neptune, which, like I said, is a really, really strong thing. And that is perfect on the 12th of April. But the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction is that another great big opening point. In fact, I'm just going to bring up that chart now. There we go. So on the 12th of April, there we have Jupiter and Neptune opening at 23 degrees in the sign of Pisces. So anyone, if you've got your ascendant, and I've got a couple of clients that do have their ascendant there, or one of their angles, like, these things here, the very sensitive points, or if you've got your sun there or your moon there at 22, 23 degrees in the sign of Pisces. I know people born in 1966 and early 67 have got Chiron there, and possibly Saturn, if I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head, but definitely Chiron there. So this is a really sensitive point. Anyone with anything, say, from 20 degrees to 25 degrees in Pisces is going to feel this. But this is a huge opening point. This is possibly it's possibly a worldwide awakening. It's possibly this moment where our hearts, or whatever armor we've got, like keeping our hearts and our intuition sort of like wrapped up. This is a point where it can blast right open. I'm hugely excited about this day. And again, it's a very strong day, and not a bad day to start things moving. Other things that are good about that is the strong sun and moon. They're in a trine together, and also the moon is in a trine with Mercury. So with this kind of heart opening and pineal gland opening or deepening, we feel very grounded, and we feel very comfortable in our personality. Our emotions aren't getting the better of us necessarily. We know our minds. So what I'm really seeing in April is, like, March was this huge opening, and April is the kind of consolidation of who we are and where we're going. It's really strong. And then the full moon on April the 16th, again, another really strong chart. So we've got the moon in Libra and the sun in Aries in opposition, and Jupiter and Neptune are really, really strong in their connection. But Jupiter and Neptune are in a semisextile with the sun and also in a quincunx to the moon. Now, semisextiles and quincunxes are really underrated, and yet they are I think they're beneficial, but also slightly mystical and magical aspects. They show where things are working, but not in a really definite, obvious way. It's almost like a root of magic. It feels like things happen almost like a whisper or an echo that comes to us, and it's like a scent or an intuition that sets us on a new path. It's like a dream. And so with this kind of opening here of our third eye, and of our hearts, even though it's the time of the full moon and we might feel conflicted, and it's a particularly difficult full moon, I think, with Aries and Libra, it's very much me versus you. Even during that time, I think we can find a magical way around it. So whatever's going on politically or within our own families or within our own communities, I actually think there's a way for us all to coexist and all of us have our needs met, and then the last one in April, I think I'm going to have to stop here actually and resume with May and then June, July, etc. I might have to do this in 3 or 4 parts, and I'm completely committed to doing that. So forgive me, but I'm going to stop after this because I need to have a rest. The 30th then, and this is our first eclipse of the season. So it's kind of cool that we're ending this broadcast or transmission on that. So the 30th of April, it's a day of a partial solar eclipse. And these are strong, like they're new moon energies. And this is a particularly strong one. So here, we've got the sun and the moon at 10 degrees in the sign of Taurus. Now, if you've got anything around 8 to say 16 degrees in the sign of Taurus, this is going to be a big one for you. The reason being is, and the same goes if you've got that in, say, 8 to 16 degrees in the sign of Scorpio. This will be in opposition. So these will really set off something big going on for you. But this particular new moon, and this is the second new moon in April. It's unusual to have. I think it sometimes happens, that you might get 1 month where there's 2 new moons within a month. But the energy is like this new start of how do we start again? How do we go deeper into nature? How do we go deeper into faithfulness, goodness, kindness, generosity? Taurus is a beautiful sign. It's got so much beauty in it. How can we restart, and how can we feel the joy in our hearts? Because Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Venus is so strong on that day as well. I'll talk about that in a sec. But Uranus is in a conjunction with the sun and the moon. Now, Uranus is our shocker. It's the thing that shocks us awake. It gives us insight. Actually, my ears are ringing almost like there's a download coming. Am I the only one that gets that? I'm pretty sure I'm not. When suddenly you get this like tone in your ear. So Uranus in a conjunction with the sun and the moon. This is a shocking day. This is a day of shocking new starts, getting yourself back on track. Cutting away from the past, but it's done so lovingly. Venus, that rules this sign of Taurus, is in an exact conjunction with Jupiter, so it's like an expansion of love. That's huge. Venus is also in a conjunction with Neptune, an expansion and a mysticism of love. It's like spiritual love. Is it like one love? Is it like being able to love not just our lover, our friends, our family, but being able to love all of mankind? Is that the kind of love that's been spoken about on that day? Quite possibly. Venus and Jupiter are in a sextile to Pluto. We can have power in loving everyone and feeling the magnificence of that. So our power is coming in a really amazing way. And Mercury is in a trine with Pluto. So, our true power and transcendence is coming from not from wanting to control everything, but actually allowing everything to be. You know, like, isn't that what love is like loving someone because of who they are, like loving somebody because that is who they are, that's how they're wired. And that's all that's going on. And so I see that there's this magnificent power because we're not trying to control each other. We are letting go of that completely. And there is the new moon energy, and it's also a solar eclipse, which means it's like a new moon times 10. It's a totally cool day to set a really big, powerful intention. It's massive. So actually, this really was the right time to stop my update. The other thing that I really love about this chart is this cradle, this blue cradle that was created by just the planets. That's a very, very strong set of sextiles and trines. It's very, very strong, showing a very sort of protective effect. So anyway, I'm gonna love you all and leave you, and like I say, I'll be back here tomorrow at the same time. For anyone, thank goodness, you know, like anyone that has stayed on this long is an absolute beautiful, beautiful person. what amazing strength you have. So we've got got a few messages here. So Sue Fraser saying, I have to go on my way to Uncle's funeral. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that of his passing. I hope it goes well. Love to everybody. Love back to you, Sue, and your whole family. Kate K, so sorry, Sue Fraser. Pray hands. Owen's also saying, much love to you and yours. You've got so much support here, Sue. Isn't that beautiful? Expats Portugal, wash hands, wash hands, wash hands. What's going on with that? That must be Mr. Carl, but who knows? Why is he saying wash hands, wash hands, wash hands? Is that what's going on back in April? Who knows? Owen saying, wow, 2022 will be my year. July the 4th, my birthday. Well, we'll have a look at that one tomorrow. July, let's just see. When's the full moon in July? We'll have a quick look at the 4th of July for you. And Expats Portugal, good morning. Okay, so that, I think, that has been, I'm glad I've been able to share that with you. There's so much more coming tomorrow, including the massive Uranus North Node conjunction. And like I said, when I finished this, I will also do a session where I teach you all how to do your own chart and to find your most sensitive parts so that you can cross-reference any of these charts I've shared and these times, and you can start to work out, oh my word, wow, the new moon here in September, that's a big one for me. Oh my goodness, so is the one in April. And so you can start to plan out your year. So anyway, lots and lots of love to you. I took myself out of my own show. Thank you so much for your presence. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and all the others. Thanks for sharing your love with each other in the chat room. Love you all. I'll check in with you another time. Bye for now.